welcome all to the November 13th edition of Charlie McGrath's Wide Awake News. It is Wednesday and time for Karen's Corner. I am going to continue with a topic that we began last week because, to me, our belief systems reflected in our world are in need of examination because we are flushing ourselves and continue to do so. And why is that? What is it about our belief systems that keep us divided, that keep us fighting with each other? We know that those in power have infiltrated every institution we can think of, including religion. Last week, my guests were Joseph Atwill, who is joining me tonight. He is from CaesarsMessiah.com. We also had Clint Richardson and Freeman Burt. And it was a very interesting conversation. We had Ryan Gilmore as well, who is in the UK, but it's midnight there. It's a little late for him tonight. So I'm looking forward to hearing Deanna Spingola, who is the guest tonight with Joseph Atwill. And Deanna is a host on RBN. She also has SpingolaSpeaks.com and I believe Spingola.info.com. Is that right, Deanna?
It's Spingola.com and SpingolaSpeaks.info, which was actually created by one of our listeners, which I'm very grateful for because he provides some audio files, and, well, it's just nice. It's very nice of him to do that.
Well, now I know that you had Joe as a guest not long ago. And for those of you who did not catch the first installment last week, it's on November 6th on the archives. And after this program, I'll put a link also up on my blog to it because I think this is a very, very important topic. And I also want to say that I am looking at an email that I received because the question tonight, and Deanna, after I finished reading this, I'm going to go to you with that question of Jesus, man or myth, does it matter? So one of my listeners says, what do you mean, what does it matter? What kind of dumb rhetorical question is that? What does it matter? How about the 2 billion plus Christians? You think it matters to them? You would never ask what does it matter about Muhammad or Buddha, and don't tell me you wouldn't. Secularists like you have your sights set on Christianity because Christians are the biggest threat to the New World Order, and you know it. Karen, you're nothing more than a dupe and a useful idiot for the satanic New World Order. You have no credibility with me whatsoever. Okay. So obviously it matters to this person, but if I'm not mistaken, and Joe, you can back me up on this, last week, Clint Richardson of thecorporationnation.com and Freeman Burt from onlyfreeman.com basically agreed that whether or not he existed doesn't matter, but his teachings do. Joe, is that what you picked up from it?
Right. I think that they were taking the position that the words of Jesus were different than sort of the political context of the religion, and that if you if the words were working well in your life, then what was the harm of Christianity? I'm not sure I'm really qualified to completely explain their positions, but I know that they were saying that if you just didn't get into the political context of the Gospels, in other words, the narrative, other things like that, and just stuck with the sayings of Jesus, that you would have a positive experience. I think that's what... that would be how I'd paraphrase what they were trying to say.
Okay. So now, Deanna, to you. Jesus, man or myth, and does it matter?
Well, I grew up believing that there was a Christ. I grew up in a very, as many people have, in a very dysfunctional family. I had an alcoholic mother, a distant, emotionally unavailable father, and church was the only place that I felt acceptance. And I wanted to attend, and this was when we're talking when I was 7 or 8. And so I walked to the local Methodist church by myself, which was probably 5 or 6 blocks away on a busy street. That is where I memorized my first scripture, which I can still repeat, because when you're 7 and you memorize things, they stick with you. But the scripture was, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." And I mean, that was a hopeful kind of thing. We all want to live forever. We all want to continue on. And I think that you cannot separate a belief in God from a belief in Christ. However, and getting back to the comment that your listener made from last week, Christianity has been co-opted from the very, very beginning. I believe that all the churches have been certainly infiltrated, and whether he was a man or a myth, and there's certainly a lot of other documents in addition to Josephus and the other work that has been cited thus far. There's a lot of documentation, a lot of other sources that indicate that there was pre-Christian communities. When you're talking about the Nag Hammadi text or the Dead Sea Scrolls or some of those particular things, that there was the supposition, even in the Old Testament. If you're talking about Isaiah, there was a kind of a foretelling that this person would come along. Now, when we think about who wrote the scriptures, we have to understand that the Bible is an arbitrary book that a certain group of people put together. They left out a lot of things. They left out what we refer to as the Apocrypha. They left out a lot of things. They included a lot of things which I think are just absolutely perversions, like the Song of Solomon. So it wasn't like Christ just suddenly appeared in what was it? It would be about, let's see, when was he born?
It would be the year 1.
Yes, we think of BC and AD, and I'm thinking, well, let's see now, when was his birthday? Yes, I guess it would be 0 or 1.
Right. Amazing that he was born on the year 1. What a coincidence.
Right. So, and of course, I think there's been a lot of mythology attributed to him, and I think that the Catholic Church, I appreciate my Catholic friends. I love my Catholic friends, but the Catholic Church came along in about 325 AD as a result of some political intrigues and that kind of thing. And Catholic itself means universal, and they came along and co-opted it and just drastically changed it. And of course, you also had the Greek philosophers who totally corrupted the Christian concept of God. And as far as God, I think that when we look at the organization in the universe, I mean, the sun always rises on a regular basis. The earth is, I believe, an electrical entity, as is man. And this is certainly not a result of the Big Bang theory or some, evolution or something like that, although I believe that we evolve. Our bodies are miracles in and of themselves, the intricacy of the cells, the DNA. So I do believe in God. I'm certainly, people who claim that God does not exist are certainly very arrogant. And we know that there's agnostics and atheists. And, but I have changed since I was a child. I have viewed the terrible horrors of warfare, and the gentleman or lady, whoever wrote to you, and I must say that I get the most hate mail that I get, or I would say probably 98% of the hate mail that I get comes from Christians, because Christians are not going to save the world from the New World Order. They are going to perpetuate it because they have been co-opted. And in the book, well, I wrote an article quite some time ago. It's called Cannon Fodder for the New World Order. And I quoted General Sharap Spiridovich, who wrote, and I quote, "War is only a legalized mass murder. Thus Christ pointed out those who arrange all wars and revolutions, and that their chief cause is Satan and his sons, lust of murder, but Christians never seem to agree with Christ," unquote. And Gandhi, who actually worked for the British, concurred when he said, and I quote, "Everyone but Christians understands that Jesus was nonviolent," unquote. So, I mean, you have all these different views of who Christ was, and I personally, in my own life, with my experience, I believe that true worship is how we live our lives, how we treat others, how we treat ourselves, and how we allow others to treat us, as well as the values that we consistently embrace, not just the values that we claim to hold. Because if you consider that this is a Christian country, which it absolutely is not, and we are probably the world's biggest terrorist. When you look at all the wars, you'll find that most of them, all of them, were started by the United States and the people who are running the U.S. government, or the people who are in charge of the politicians in this country. And I think we all know who those people are.
Well, I'm still unclear here. So to you, okay, did Jesus exist, and does it matter?
Okay. I guess I didn't answer the question. Did he exist? I think that it's an individual question. I think that for me, I have embraced the Christian doctrine, not the Christianity that is associated with corporation churches, not the 501c3 churches, the corporations who actually who actually obey the government. And I believe that so did he exist? He does for me in the fact that I embrace the doctrine. And
okay,
I try to live that doctrine, but I have a different take. I have different perspectives on the scriptures. I believe that the scriptures are individual for individuals. Like when you say, okay, turn the other cheek, that doesn't mean that you allow somebody to walk all over you. It means that you're forgiving, you're loving, you're kind, you treat others the way that you would want to be treated.
Okay, Joe, you have any comments on that?
Well, it's hard to disagree. I think that there is a lot of plasticity in the words of the Gospels, and they can be taken by some people and used to create righteousness in their life. But unfortunately, the same can be said almost about any kind of collection of words. The history of Christianity is not good. It brought about the Dark Ages, the feudal system, the slavery.
Well, but you're talking about the Catholic Church.
Right. Well, but
I think you have to separate those two.
Right. Well, I disagree. I don't think you can separate them, because the fact is, without the Catholic Church, we would never even know about Christianity. They're the entity that actually brought the scriptures and the teaching of Jesus to Europe. They're the ones that use the religion for 2,000 years for their purpose. And yes, there was the Reformation, and now there's a lot of different variations of Christianity. But the fact is, for the first 1,600 years, there wasn't any variation at all. So I really don't think you can honestly separate the Catholic Church from Christianity. I think that without the Catholic Church, there wouldn't be any. And if it makes the analysis easier, I'm perfectly willing to say, the Catholic Church instead of Christianity, but just be aware what I'm talking about is the historical reality. I'm just talking about what actually happened. And so you can parse out a way of understanding Jesus from the actual history of the church, and from the canon itself, because there are many things, as you pointed out, in the canon that are not compatible with democracy. But when you do that, you're doing an artificial, process. It isn't something that is actually was done in the first century or at any other time we know. I mean, the question I always ask is that, look, clearly the Caesars and the power of Rome started using the gospel for their social control. There's no question that the feudal system, was using Christianity as a kind of a mind control device for the serfs to keep them from rebelling. So my question is always, well, if the Gospels contain such wholesome and democratic principles, well, why did this group use this particular canon for mind control of peasants?
Well, for one thing, the canon, the dogma, was not readily available to anybody. They depended, as many people do now, upon the priest or the minister, and they never actually read the source itself. They don't understand the source. If they understood the source, they would probably be acting quite a bit different. And so, and when you look at the way that like the seminaries, the people who controlled the seminaries, I'm talking in the 1700s and whatnot, when they first began creating seminaries, and this started with Yale University, and the Calvinist Timothy Dwight, and they created their view of Christianity, and each group has done that. But if you look at the doctrine itself, and there is a difference, there's a big difference between the Bibles. Well, for instance, the King James Bible. Well, that was just written by a group of people that King James decided to get together. And if you look at the original Septuagint, which is the Greek translation version of the New Testament, you'll find all kinds of errors, and actually it changes the meaning of many things, and which also you can say about the new versions of the scriptures now. If you compare those to the King James version and the Septuagint and some of the new modern versions, you will find that there's a lot of difference, and they actually change the meaning of all concepts.
I get, but I'm just going to ask you, Constantine in 310. He ordered that there be 50 copies of what we know as the New Testament to be created and used as the official canon of the church. And we actually have either the direct documents in terms of Vaticanus, which is the oldest codex that we have, which may have been one of the ones that he created, or it was certainly immediately copied, because they can date it into the early parts of the 4th century. So we know that was the canon. So let me just ask the question again. Why did Constantine pick this canon? What was there about it, since he was obviously creating the feudal system? In other words, Constantine gets his positive legacy for bringing about the transformation from paganism to Christianity. But he also set up the feudal system. He also created the edicts against landowners that took away their rights of ownership. They couldn't leave the land. They couldn't change their vocation. Their children could be sold, right? They suddenly became the property of the state. They couldn't change vocation. And basically, Constantine set up Christianity as the state religion, or he began the process. But at the same time, he set up the slave system of feudalism. So my question is, why? Why did he pick this canon? What was there about it, do you think, that made him believe that this would be an effective device for mind control?
Well, perhaps he viewed perhaps he viewed the history of how Christians were had a certain level of obedience, but their level of obedience, their obedience was to God and not to the state. And so I think that he just sort of co-opted things and made it the state religion and altered it to the point that they were actually worshiping the state instead of Christ or God. And I think that we see the same kind of situation here in America, that people are totally obedient to the state.
That's okay. Finish your point.
Taught in school. That's the way they've been taught in school. That is how they've been taught in the media. That's why everybody, well, not everybody, but they pledge allegiance to the state. And yet they all claim to be, or a lot of people claim to be Christians, when in fact, that you can't do both. You can't be obedient to the state and God too.
All right. Hold on to that thought. Listeners, please stay with me if you want to comment. 877-342-6673. Jesus, man or myth, doesn't matter. We'll be right back.
Pain, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, unbalanced cholesterol, irregular heartbeat, or clogged arteries. There is a solution that doesn't involve expensive prescription drugs that only mask the problem and leave you with horrible side effects. If you are ready to live your life free of sickness, pain, and fear, live your life with increased vitality, energy, and youthfulness, and experience your body healing itself, then you're ready for Heart and Body Extract from Healthy Hearts Club. Heart and Body Extract has a 23-year proven track record of using certified organic herbs that make up an excellent formula to balance and support the heart and circulatory system. In as little as 2 weeks, you can feel amazing results when your 2-month supply of Heart and Body Extract today. Call 1-866-295-5305 or go to hbextract.com.
If you're taking 1, 2, 5, or more nutritional supplements every day, please stop. Simplify your supplementation with Bio Superfood, the most advanced nutritional whole food supplement you can buy. Men, women, children, and even Olympic athletes the world over have discovered Bio Superfood from BioAge.com and now take just one nutritional supplement instead of many. The Bio Superfood formulas are whole food products composed with 4 of the most nutrient-dense algae species found on Earth. Bio Superfood for the brain helps with focus, memory, clarity, and mood. Bio Superfood is a strong defender in the fight against radiation exposure. Bio Superfood has zero toxicity, is safe, and has no contraindications whatsoever. Learn more and order your Bio Superfood formulas at BioAge.com. That's spelled BioAge.com. BioAge.com. Or you can call 877-288-9116. That's 877-288-9116. BioAge, the age of advanced organics.
Dr. Robert Rowan, M.D.
They literally do miracles for a wide variety of conditions, from infection to autoimmune conditions and beyond that.
I have a very close relative who was faced with a severe challenge to her immune system, and my father, as a family physician, suggested that she take the Carnivora. She took the Carnivora 3 times a day, and 3 weeks later, her condition was completely eliminated. It supported her immune system to such a degree that she's perfectly fine and healthy now.
This is Richard Ostro, owner for Carnivora Research International. Buy 2, get 1 free on Carnivora capsules. You must use the promotion code BCAPS3. That's BCAPS3 when purchasing online at carnivora.com or calling 1-866-VENUS-FLY. That's CARNIVORA.com. Call 1-866-VENUS-FLY. Protect your immune system. It's the only one you've got.
All right, who can it be knocking at my door? Well, a lot of us believe that Jesus has knocked on our hearts. A lot of us believe totally in Jesus. And Deanna, I thought it was very interesting that you said you can't really, you have to separate God and state. Would you clarify that?
Well, Constantine, I think, recognized that there was a group of people that he could not control. Just in the exact same way that in late 1969 or 1970 that Rockefeller and some of his cronies decided, you know what? We are not getting the religious in this country involved in politics. They are totally isolated. They just don't participate. What can we do to get these religious people involved and kind of on our side? So they looked at Jimmy Carter. He was a nice little Sunday school teacher. And of course, this was after the women's movement, where they politicized the issue of abortion. And so that got the religious, a lot of the religious people involved in saying, well, wait a minute. The state can't do this. The Supreme Court can't do this. And so they made decisions and put in a president who galvanized the South. Now, keep in mind that the South has always been the Bible Belt since the so-called Civil War. The North was always very secular. They invaded the South in order to bring them around, in order to well, I don't know. There were several reasons, which I enumerated in my first book. But I believe that this is the same kind of thing that Constantine probably saw. He saw a group of people that just weren't paying any attention and that they could not control. And so in order to control those people, he made Christianity the religion of the state. And you can also compare that as we move up from Jimmy Carter and get George W. Bush in there, and all of a sudden, he comes across as this Christian. He's a Christian Zionist, and he's got all of these Christian Zionists in his cabinet, and pretty soon you have the whole country kind of in your pocket, in the politician's pocket. And many of the Christians, the so-called Christians, don't have a clue that their movement, that their group has been co-opted. And of course, in 1965, you had Johnson with corporatizing the churches and making them all corporations so that they would have to obey. And if they didn't, they would lose their tax-free status, which is ridiculous. They shouldn't have even been considering taxes to begin with. But all of these things kind of played together, and I can't help but think that this was the same kind of thing that happened with Constantine and in the Roman Empire, when they decided we've got a group of people that we cannot control.
Joe, you want to take that?
Sure. I think actually it was just the opposite. The reason they selected Christianity is because they knew that these people could be controlled. That's the only real reason that they would have picked this particular canon. It was they probably had a chance to observe the religion in operation for a while, 100 years, and so they were well aware of what it produced in people mentally. I think that they were, particularly if you look at the actual, the so-called church fathers, the way they describe that people should believe in Jesus and then nothing else. In other words, they actually talk about how they're deliberately putting out the intellectual light of Europe with Christianity. I think that that's not only more plausible, but just as, obviously what brought about. It wasn't that the Christians were hard to control. It was just the opposite. They were the easiest to control group imaginable, and that's why they chose to make it the state religion. What they did was they put the Pontiff Maximus at the top of it. And the Christians, because their mental capacities had been so diminished by the religion, they couldn't really determine that the Pontiff Maximus was just another name for Caesar. Pontiff Maximus, the title of the Pope, that's just one of the titles that the Caesars always used. And somehow this crude Rouge was unnoticed, and I think it has to do with the fact that, like in so many early church authors, they talk about there's really no mental capacity. I mean, once you have a faith system installed in someone, it's very difficult for a person under those conditions to be able to really think their way out of problems that they face, because the faith itself essentially is what they use to explain their circumstance. If things are going wrong, this means that they're not that God is responsible. You'd have to go through every single example in a specific way, but just in a very general sense, Christianity was chosen as the religion of the feudal system because it made people easy to control.
Well, Catholicism, because I still maintain that Christianity has absolutely no resemblance to Catholicism, because they co-opted it, altered it, adopted a lot of the Greek philosophy, and then when you consider that a lot of the pre-Christian, before Christ was born, when you look at the Qumran community, and that started about 200 BC. And they left, they totally left. They went out into the desert. They were isolated so that they could have their own community. They did not want to be corrupted or influenced by what was going on in a very corrupt state, the Roman Empire. And also, you're separating, you're talking about the New Testament and the Old Testament. You have all of the foreordained, the forerunner. The Old Testament means the Old Covenant. And between Malachi and Matthew, there are about 400 years. And so, you can't just separate it and say, okay, Christianity started with the New Testament. Because there's Christianity talked about, implied in the Old Testament. And sure. It was a foreshadowing of what was to come.
Right.
And but then you have the 300 years between when Christ died, about 300 years. To 325 is when they created the Catholic Church, and a lot of things happened in that time. For instance, in Jerusalem was totally destroyed in 70 A.D., and you had people who were separated at that time and living away from the larger areas like Rome and Jerusalem. So anyway, I just think that you have to make a distinction between Christianity and Catholicism. Yes, you did state that they maintained the scriptures. They maintained their scriptures, and certainly they imposed their scriptures. But those scriptures, remember, were not available to anyone until the printing press was invented. And so they could do whatever, they could say whatever they wanted and tell people whatever they wanted to tell them. And that is how they control these people, because these people didn't have access to the source. And we do have access to many sources now.
We do, although whether or not it comes from word of mouth or the people who own the printing presses is a point that I would take issue with. We're getting ready for the last break. If you want, get your glass of water. We do a water blessing and meditation on the way out. And if you feel like calling, Jesus, man or myth, does it matter? 877-342-6673. We'll be right back after these messages.
McGrath here at WideAwakeNews.com, and I'm here to tell you I believe that Chris and the folks over at SeedsNow.com offer the best product at the best prices with the best service of anybody in the market. But don't take my word for it. Listen to what some of their customers have to say. Joshua in Florida writes, exceeded my expectations. Shipping was prompt and a number of my plants are already starting to sprout. Thanks for being great. And Ryan in California writes, I just received my homestead seed bank, my all-in-one prepper pack, and seed-to-seed storage and growing guidebook, and I could not be more pleased. Thanks, Seeds Now. Now I can start growing and get off the GMOs. Keep up the great work. And the list goes on and on. Guys, it's time to make SeedsNow.com an integral part of your long-term preparedness strategy. Please call them at 877-344-4669. That number again, 877-344-4669. Or better yet, visit them today at SeedsNow.com.
What if you could shift into a parallel universe right now and be the solution to any problem you're facing? I'm Matthew David Hurtado, CEO of RNA Drops and author of Misfit to Millions, based on my true life story. 4 years ago, I was dying with Lyme's disease, PTSD, and virtually homeless. Ion and the RNA Drops gave me a new life, new DNA, and the power to become a millionaire in just a few short years. I want to pay that forward to you. Get a copy of my book, Misfit to Millions, and I'll give you a free bottle of RNA Drops, the product that changed my life. I've got $199 in free bonus gifts for the first 200 people that go to misfittomillions.com and get a copy of my book now. Go to misfittomillions.com. That's MISFITTO millions.com. What would you be, do, and have if you knew you couldn't fail? Take the plunge now. Go to misfittomillions.com.
Charlie McGrath of WideAwakeNews.com here with a question for my friends at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion. What do they know that we don't? Insiders and a who's who list of elite have made it crystal clear that we are headed for catastrophe, putting out warning after warning, urging people to batten down the hatches. Billionaire George Soros has recently been dumping stocks and at the same time acquiring millions in gold. In fact, in a recent interview, he was quoted as saying, I'm not here to cheer you up. The situation is as serious and difficult as I've experienced in my career. Out of control government deficit spending and a Federal Reserve that's only solution seems to be print more fiat currency will lead to a weaker dollar and massive inflation on necessity items such as energy and food. If you have wealth to protect, please visit my friends at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion. Gabe Elton and the folks at Austin Rare Coins and Bullion have many Wide Awake News customers because they're honest, they're fair, and they won't sell you paper promises or product they do not have. Call Gabe Elton at 800-552-4109. That number again, 800-552-4109, or visit them online at austincoins.com.
Make a promise, take a vow, trust your feelings, it's easy now. Understand the voice within and feel a change.
Is it easy? I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. Some of the comments I'm reading say that we're not really touching the fact about Jesus. We're talking about other men. So right here, though, before we get into continuing this, because I'd really love for the listeners to open their hearts and their heads and their minds and consider also the fact that there are at least 15, if not more, stories that predate Jesus that have the same basic storyline. We can go to Attila, 1200 BC in Greece, born of a virgin, miracles at 12, teaching other people, resurrected after he died. We can go to Krishna, another story of a virgin birth, of miracles, of resurrection after death. I watched with my husband Zeitgeist last night, and I put it up also on United We Strike. It's on the documentary page. And for those of you who are interested, I'd like you to check that out, watch the first section on religion, and begin to also understand that everything we do, everything we learn, all of our history has been written by the winners. When you put something down in a book, when you make it real that way, or it seems to be more real, it's also more believable. This is a short segment here. I'm very, very grateful for my guest tonight. We're having an excellent conversation in the commercials. This YouTube also will be up. It should be up by tomorrow. I'll put the link in. I'll also put the link on my blog page because I do want to know, though, just the simple bottom line question, Deanna, and I want to ask you, because, okay, you say that Jesus exists for you, but now if I ask you in a historical position, did he exist? Do you believe that he existed as a human being?
You know, I really don't know because I wasn't there. I only know what I read and the doctrine that I use for my value system.
Okay, now, so does it matter to you, though? Does it matter then? Is this a question that matters or doesn't matter? And I really appreciate your honesty.
Does it matter? No, because this is the way I live my life. This is the dogma, the doctrine, the values that I accept and try to apply to my life. And
thank you. We don't have a whole lot of time here. Joe, comments on that? Did Jesus exist, and does it matter?
I believe the character is fictional. He's fictional because, first of all, the century that he was born in was a century of warfare between a Messianic movement and the Roman Empire, and so the character Jesus is suspicious on his face because this is simply not the era during which you had pro-Roman messiahs walking around talking about giving to Caesar what is Caesar's. This just is completely impossible historically. So, and then beyond that, the character is, as Deanna had mentioned, there's all these prefiguration elements. Well, once you get too many of these, then you end up losing the whole historical reality of the character. The character starts to essentially disintegrate because you can trace where all of the storylines are coming from. These aren't historical events. These are things that the authors are creating to create the impression that there was a kind of prefiguring of the character. The stories come from, stories in the Old Testament. And does it matter? I mean, it matters if, in fact, this matters to individuals, then it matters. But, I would say that for people who want to, talk about that kind of a spiritual connection to Jesus, I'm just not the right person. I look at the literature in the perspective of his history and politics and finance. And from that perspective, I can see who wrote it, what their motives were, what the literature means, and I have an understanding of it. Those who want to look at it in a different way, as if the literature has a spiritual context that can be separated out, that's their business. It's not mine. I don't really have a position on that, and in that sense, it doesn't matter if Jesus was historical or not, because it's really a private decision and not something that I would ever have desire to comment on or be part of.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It looks like we've got a caller, Glenn from Philly. We don't have a whole lot of time. Welcome to the program. Jesus, man or myth, doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, and this question you're kicking around is very well established in theological circles. It's, there's the question of the Jesus of history versus the Christ of faith. I mean, we have, books, a book with that title, and this is now, and basically what you're wrestling with is subjectivity versus objectivity. Is it a matter of subjective perception of the individual and opinion and all that versus does it really matter whether or not objectively, historically, this man, God, Jesus Christ, actually existed? And yeah, that someone, obviously, opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody has one, but it really does matter. It's just like saying, can I step out in front of a bus and not be killed? Oh, I'm of the opinion that I can step in front of a bus and not be killed. No, if you step in front of a bus, you're going to be killed. It's an objective, physical world fact, and yeah, it matters. So that's the question. The Christian assertion is that Jesus is an objective historical individual, you know, and you know, he is, you know, way, the truth, and life, and no man comes to the Father but by him. That's the difference between people living eternally or being eternally lost. And yeah, it's so that's going to be the stance of that is the Christian stance. And it's also important to remember, someone spoke of the other Savior stories with the virgin birth and all that sort of thing. You know, you have the writings of Diane Murdoch, alias Acharya S., who also is a disciple of Albert Churchward and people like him. That's a very old movement pointing out all these, you have the Christ Conspiracy and all those books like that speak of it. And that's essentially has to do with the problem of syncretism. You know, how when Christianity spread, it was mishmashed together with the solar hero mythos and Druidic religion and Mithraism and stuff like that. They're always going to have this mishmashing of the religions. It's important to remember that Jesus is a Jew. He is a Pharisaical Jew, and it's not the solar God. You know, his father is Yahweh. Yahweh is the I am that I am. He's the eternally, transcendently conscious one, not the sun, not the solar mythos. It has nothing to do with the Saturnian cultus or the lunar cultus or the solar cultus or any of those syncretistic, idolatrous religions that are mishmashed together with Christianity and, you know, that bring down the condemnation of these authors.
So you say that Jesus does exist?
Absolutely. His name, and nobody ever called him Jesus or Jesus in his day. His name was Yahusha, which means Yahweh saved. He's the son of Yahweh, the eternally conscious one, which is very different than any of these solar hero myths. Okay,
thank you very much for that. I'm going to let you go only because I don't have that much time. But I will say, okay, Deanna, you got about a minute to do a quick wrap. Tell us about your program.
All righty. My program, well, actually I have two now. My program is on Monday through Friday on RBN from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's Central Time. Then I also have a program, it's relatively new, on the American Free Press Radio Network, which is on Tuesday from 2 to 4 p.m. Again, that is Central Time. My websites are Spingola.com and SpingolaSpeaks.info, which was created by one of our listeners. So I can't take credit for that. He did a fabulous job.
Well, thank you, Deanna. I really appreciate you joining me. I appreciate your honesty. Joe, some final words from you, and I know you'll be back next week.
Yeah, I'll be back next week. Anyone who's curious about Caesar's Messiah can get it at CaesarsMessiah.com. You can order either the documentary or the book itself. And I'm available for answering questions about the thesis. Just you can go to CaesarsMessiah.com and ask questions if you have any. And thank you so much for.
Thank you, Brett. If you could turn up the music here, it's cutting it short for the water. Here's one of the beautiful things about Christianity, some music. Although next week I'd really like to hear some physical evidence of Jesus existing, and that is yet to be forthcoming. Be well, check out Zeitgeist. Remember, more than we've been lied to believe, bless that water.
viruses, bacteria, mold, yeast, and fungus, and keeping the human body healthy and strong. Now, you can give your body and your immune system a mega boost of disease-fighting oxygen with all-natural Oxy-C. With so many people now leading a sedentary indoor lifestyle, most are in a chronic state of oxygen deprivation, which sets up a perfect environment for disease, general fatigue, and a host of other symptoms. Oxy-C is yours in simple, convenient capsules. Nothing to mix, nothing to hassle with. Take it with juice or water anytime. Feel a cold or flu approaching? Have no energy or spark anymore? Try all-natural Oxy-C and prepare to be amazed. Oxy-C is only available from New Earth Health Solutions at Rense.com. Look for the New Earth banner at Rense.com.
In 2007, one man, Mike Dillard, made 5 predictions which forecasted the 2008 economic crisis and the pending Eurozone collapse. 3 brand new, shocking, must-watch videos with predictions for the coming year. www.the3videos.com. Over the past year, Mike Dillard has helped thousands of ordinary people create and recover wealth by tapping into the black box investing strategies the big banks don't want you to know about. www.the3videos.com. As the European banking system implodes and governments collapse at breakneck speeds, the next 12 months will be the most anticipated and important months in modern human history. This will make 2008 look like a walk in the park. Everyone will be affected. Go to www.the3videos.com now. Learn how to prepare your family and prosper during the global financial collapse.
You're listening to the Rense Radio Network, nationwide and worldwide on the net and at Rense.com.